welcome candidate Alfheim to the NINA satellite interview and such. Could you tell me why you are running for this position?
Sure. I am a believer in balance and civility and taking care of people. So I joined this race not as someone who is angry or has an individual issue, but as somebody who's been very good at communicating and helping people problem solve from various and diverse backgrounds. So it's something that I've done my entire career, and I thought, why not bring it to this time in our politics where we all could get along perhaps a little bit better and get some progress done.
And speaking of your career, could you mind talking about some of the relevant experience you have before running?
Sure. So I actually grew up on a farm, so I understand in central Wisconsin. I understand very well hard work. I picked rock, I made hay, I did all the things you do on a farm. Then I actually worked in a restaurant through high school and in through college. And then I ended up joining the insurance and financial services industry. And very soon into my career, I started teaching and training advisors and agents how to do their jobs. So how to ask good questions, how to identify what the problems are, and how to offer great solutions for their clients.
And could you explain for our viewers what qualities that you would have, or what policies that you are proposing that would make you better than your opponent?
Sure. And there's two questions there. One is what makes better and what policies. So my policy belief is people before corporations. I'm a fan in understanding what the people need, whether it be from a services aspect and city and municipality services, whether it be individual choice and decision-making process. I'm a fan of people having rights. From a personal standpoint, I think that it helps when you have somebody go into politics that doesn't have a singular idea of what to work on. My answer is to help create relationships so we can get some things going and actually get things accomplished like we used to.
And what are the main issues that you will pledge to fight for, not only just now, but if elected? What are your main priorities?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious in the national news has to do with Roe. I'm a supporter of people having choices to do what they need to do in a very, very private, personal situation. In general, I think that we have a major issue in Madison where people don't really understand what's going on. There's a lot of blame on the governor's part, but realistically, no matter what the governor tries to do, the legislature is the one who has to release the dollars. So this large budget excess that we have is not truly excess. It's actually revenue that used to, 10 years ago, come to the schools, come to the municipalities for roads, for water systems, for the police departments, for the fire departments. That money used to take care of us as individual families in our localities, and I'm going to push to try and make that come back.
So you initially mentioned Roe being an issue. Can we hear your thoughts on the current 1849 abortion law in Wisconsin, which largely bans the practice?
Yeah, 1849 is a very, very long time ago. And to go back to a rule where women, people of color, people didn't have the right to vote, much less have representation. There was no thought for anybody else except for the classic white male. Now, we've come a long way since then. Don't you think our decision-making and our laws should come with that?
And coming into this election, aside from Roe, what do you think is the biggest issue on people's minds, and how will you respond to that?
You know, I talk to a lot of people. I just came off of knocking on 40 doors, and I'm going to go out and knock on another 27 when we're done here. Hence my outfit. But what I hear is that people are tired of the anger. They're tired of not being able to have a conversation about what's important to them. It's time that we settle down, go back to finding commonality and working forward together for the good of the people. People are tired of the noise on the edges. Most of us have far more in common than we do different, and that's who they want in charge. People that understand and will listen to all sides and make rational decisions for the most people possible without beating up on the heads that are paying for it.
And you you mentioned at the very last moment a little bit about finances, and I believe your opponent has made the issue of particularly inflation a central part of her campaign. Would you have any comments about that, of what you would do as a state senator to combat inflation?
Sure. You hear in the news and read on the signs every ad that involves the word inflation, but the reality is inflation is an economic tool. Now, don't get me wrong. It hurts when a loaf of bread costs more money. We all are going through that. But we have to realize there is a once-in-a-generation situation that has caused it. You have interest rates that were held artificially low for too long. You have the pandemic that came in and caused a supply chain issue. And then you have the flooding of cash into the economy because of the pandemic. That is a recipe for disaster. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't have happened, but it means those three things together mean we have to go through the pain of letting the supply chain catch up, which means we forcefully slow down building to let it catch up, which is the raising of interest rates. So we have to remember that inflation is a tool used in our economy that comes to an end shortly. Once we get beyond looking at today's inflation, we have a lot more long-term issues than we do that.
Your opponent largely argues in previous question and answer sessions that have also been published on our website that one main method of combating this inflation is to reduce, quote, wasteful spending on the part of the federal government. Do you agree with this assessment?
Well, I think that wasteful spending and inflation don't have anything to do with each other. They're two separate issues. I'm a fan of removing duplicity in government. I don't think that we need duplication. I think leaning out any organization is valid. The idea that all government is wasteful is completely false, and it's purely a narrative that you hear. I've been on the city council in Appleton for a year and a half, and I assure you, we are not wasteful. There is far less flow of cash in from the revenue coming from the state, which is forcing us to pinch pennies and have to raise taxes. If we fixed the revenue issue in Madison, we no longer would have to raise taxes. In fact, we might get lower.
And on your website, you do mention that you are in support of a program that would provide tuition forgiveness for post-secondary education. Would this restructuring of the financial state system be a main way that you would pay for that?
I love the idea of people, families, and business working together for the good of our community. The reality is that our employers, our companies, need workers. We need education to get there. I would love to see the idea of a tuition forgiveness program, and there are small pieces of this around the state, where if you go to school, whether it be 2 years or 4 years, and it's in a career that we need in the state of Wisconsin, if you graduate and go to work for a period of time in Wisconsin, you are thereby giving back to your community. I believe we can wipe some of that off. It becomes a symbiotic relationship between education, the workforce, and our general population. I think that's good for us. So again, things have to work together, and I think there's the ability to do that.
Your opponent supports altering the rules of voting and such. What would you support in that topic?
Everyone wants safe, trustworthy elections. I think in the state of Wisconsin there have been, and it's not an exact number, but I'm going to say less than 10 cases of fraudulent voters, and not all on one side. 10 out of, I believe, how many million?
Say at least 3.
Yeah, 3.6 million votes. So are there going to be a bad apple every now and then? Yes. Do we spend millions of dollars chasing a ghost? No. Do we put false fears into people about our voting system? No. These are our family members, our volunteers, our city clerks who live in our towns that have been doing a really good job helping us to have a safe, honest, smooth running election for decades. And all of a sudden, there seems to be an issue. Is there an issue? Or is it just that people are putting fear out there in people's minds? I think that we need to stop the politics. go back to just taking care of each other, being kind to one another, and letting the people do their jobs that have been doing it dutifully for decades.
And are there any other political or economic issues on your mind that you would like to discuss?
Well, I think we have to talk about science and history a little bit. I'm a believer in both. We're sitting in the midst of a library. I do believe libraries should give you the opportunity to learn, to explore, to be curious. The biggest difference between people that are judgmental and people that are curious. Judgmental people don't look for other sides of the story. Curious people want to know more and want to know why. That doesn't necessarily change them, but it allows them to experience things that they may not run into by themselves. I think that's important. Science is real. Now, it is not the only issue. It's not the only issue. We have to blend our science conversations, our sustainability conversations in with the rest of what we do in Madison. But we can't pretend we don't have a problem that's creeping up on us. And I think it's okay to start saying that, and most people want to do it.
Wonderful that you bring this up, because that was actually one of the topics of my next question. What legislation would you support, if any, as a state senator to combat the rising effects of global warming and other forms of climate change?
Yeah, I'm a supporter of the rules that are in right now that say carbon neutral by, I believe the answer is 2050. So that I absolutely support that. If we can get it done sooner, I'm not against that. But we always have to remember that we have a lot that we have to take care of. I want to make sure that we hit that mark, if not a little bit sooner. But we can't only focus on science. We also have to fix roads. We also have to fix school. We also have to do these things. But science must be involved. The climate has to be considered in everything that we do from now on. It should be part of the process, not a secondary thought and not the primary thought, but part of every discussion.
Would there be anything else that you would be interested in talking about?
Sure. I love that you have enough curiosity to ask these questions. I wish that everybody did. There's a lot of nonsense on TV, and I think the opportunity to have someone face to face and ask questions and let our guts work again in telling us who these people are and how we want to vote is really what we want to go back to, the face-to-face interaction. Right now, people are voting based on signs. Signs don't tell you a gut feeling. They just tell you what they want to tell you. So reach deeper, read interviews, watch interviews, find out who people are before you make judgments, and ignore what the title is. Instead, go to the person and listen to what they stand for, and then find out who you most recognize right now. I think that the reality is that we're supposed to be working together. And when we're screaming at each other, no one's listening. And if we aren't listening, we can't make progress. So we've got to start addressing that on both sides. And it's something that every elected official has to be willing to start stopping or taking control of. I think there's a real discussion that needs to, if you ever hear somebody say that everything's fine in Madison, I'm going to guess what side they're on. Because only 2% of the bills that were brought up by the Democratic Party even made it to the floor to be talked about. 2%. That's not right. That's not democracy. Because those bills are not brought up because someone wants to talk about it. It's brought up because their people have asked them to. So democracy means all voices. Elected officials come from the people, by the people, for the people. And the question is that actually happening? And the answer in Wisconsin right now is no.
And would there be any main steps that you would take if elected to state senate to fix this gap that you speak of?
Well, one is we have to, with the gerrymandered maps, it's a difficult thing, right? The things, again, rules should not be written that make it an unfair advantage for either party. And we are currently under a set of maps that have been drawn specifically to group blue together in a smaller amount, a 3-to-1 ratio. So this seat is one of the only seats that actually can be flipped. And I think it makes sense to have a moderate person in a swing district. We are a 50-50 district. We should have somebody who understands and realizes neither party can be right all the time. And my opponent is very much on one side. That's not who the Fox Valley is. So our representation should match who the constituents are, not just who we vote for.
Let's say someone whose door you knocked on mentioned that you perhaps are a little bit too far the other direction from their political viewpoints. What would be your response to that?
I love that question. I knock on a lot of doors, then I knock the door and I step back, and when they answer the door I say who I am, what I'm running for, let them see me eye to eye, and then I ask what's on their mind. I want them to tell me, and it does not matter to me. If they are the strongest of Trump-ish supporter, then I will be kind and I will listen to every word they say. I will be respectful. And we probably will find something that we have in common. And when we leave, if we are that far apart, I want them to know that I will listen no matter what. Because if I am elected for everyone, even those I disagree with, and I will answer the phone, no matter what their stance. That's what we're supposed to do.